Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode. And today's going to be a little different because we've got an absolute superstar here that's doing so much. And Lauren is a former client who's just gone on to do some pretty incredible things that I was just so inspired that I had to bring her to the table. So Lauren Ganim is how I would describe her. She does so much. So I'm going to try to capture this as concisely as possible, but she's a mom of 3. She's a very skilled data-driven marketer, e-commerce expert, and she's also launching a phenomenal product soon that I hope she shares more about here because I can't wait to buy some of it. And then also just watching her evolution going from just executive to consultant to business owner and balancing it all while also giving back to her community. It just really blows my mind, and I'm inspired every time I talk to her, so I wanted to bring her in for you guys to get the same level of inspiration. If you're a parent, you have big dreams, I think this is gonna be a really good episode for you. Lauren, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me on, Olivia. That's so kind. Thanks for the intro.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in because I know like you've come so far since we first met. And when I think about just the fire that was in you when I met you, you were a marketing executive doing really high level data driven stuff and it was really impressive, but you still wanted more. And even with 3 kids, most would just be like, I've got everything I can handle right now. What was it that wanted you to really push yourself to create even more? And how did you find the drive and space to even consider it?
Yeah, I think for me, there wasn't really one big moment. It was just sort of a slow realization over time that I wanted more ownership. I wanted more ownership over my time and the way I was spending it, over the creative decisions that were being made, and over just the kind of impact that I was making. I loved corporate. I learned how to scale, how to manage teams, thinking strategically. But I also observed how much time and energy went into maintaining systems that weren't necessarily driving innovation. They weren't, and they certainly weren't driving connection. And so that was where, I sort of took a step back. Career Evolved was so instrumental in just forcing me to take a really hard look at myself. I also went through, kind of some big step in my personal life that just made me take a step back and say, you know what do I want out of the next phase of my career? Because I'm somebody who I'm from an economically depressed area in West Virginia. Lifelong education has always been super important to me. It was the path out, it was the way out of poverty, it was safety, it was everything. And so for me, I have always kind of strove to push myself to continue learning, to continue growing, because that's also what makes life fun.
Absolutely. Well, I know we could go all across the board on everything you're working on right now, but I want to focus more on how did you transition or get yourself to a mindset where you could really build a business while having 3 kids? And how have you been able to even make space for that? Because I really do want to wrap my brain around that because you have so much drive. And I want to know, like, how does that look for you? How did you get this off the ground? I know you've got the consulting side, but you also have a product business. So, most people can't even build one business, let alone start to be thinking about 2. So, how are you doing all this?
Yeah, a couple years ago, I read a really phenomenal book. It's called Drop the Ball, by an amazing woman named Tiffany Dufu. And it's a book about, teaching women to let go, to reevaluate their expectations, and really, honestly, to embrace their imperfections. So when you ask me, how do I do it all? The answer is I don't. I have a wonderful team of people around me that sort of fill in the gaps of kind of the spaces and places where I'm not good at And I also have a wonderful partner. My husband, he's my partner in business, he's my partner in life. And sometimes it is, just him and I against, these crazy little kids that we've created. So it's a teamwork approach from start to finish.
I can totally relate, and that was so real of you to say because I think that having a partner as a powerful woman that aligns with your vision is not a nice to have, it's a must have. And having support systems with your children and realizing you don't have to be the only one to do everything is not a must have. I mean, it's a must have if you're going to be building your own vision and dream too. So, you are rewriting the codes of parenting, partnership, and modern day relationships. And I'm right there with you. So I see that. And, as you think about this, it's really cool to see that you're not trying to do it all and you are being really mindful, and I'm sure even now things are evolving with, who's doing what in your life to get to this next level, right?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, I am so blessed to have, a partner who supports me professionally and personally. I know a lot of women get jealous when I say, "Yeah, I don't go to the grocery store. I don't pack a lunch, but, I do volunteer at the school and I do, morning drop off and I make time to be there at the bus when they get off." It's all about what's important to you, and where you feel like you can have the most impact, whether that be in your child's life, with your business, for you personally. It is so hard to prioritize yourself and to pour into your own cup. But if you don't do that, you're not showing up for anybody. And I know in the past, where, I've got that strong perfectionism streak too. I try to do it all. And then I end up being, really snappy to my kids, not being a great partner. And then, a couple weeks will go by and I'm like, yeah, I totally missed that goal. So it's much more efficient. And it makes everyone's else, lives around you much happier if you are very clear about what your goals are and you kind of clear the path, because clarity creates that confidence for you, for your audience, for the brands that you manage, for the businesses and the community that you serve.
Clarity is everything, especially with this journey of building and, knowing kind of where to put your attention when you're building with limited resources of time and energy, you have to be very strategic. And I know you've been really skilled at juggling and balancing and just knowing it's almost like you're very in tune with what needs to be done when and where to prioritize. So I would love to hear, what are you focused on right now and how are you strategically prioritizing kind of what's being built with what you're creating?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, the next chapter is all about freedom and alignment. And I think that's why I'm sort of able to step into these roles a little more seamlessly, because I care so deeply about, obviously my family, but also the businesses, that I support and serve, as well as my community. I've always had an entrepreneurial streak. But a few years ago, I started thinking, what would it look like if I took everything I know about brand building and I apply it to something that actually reflects my values, my creativity, my community? And that's where, our brand Chalked Apparel came in. It's a kids athletic wear brand. It's inspired by youth sports, but it's around the idea of confidence and grit and resilience. We launched our first capsule collection this fall, and it's just been incredible to see it connect with families who share that same growth mindset. Every piece in the collection has an affirmation woven into the garment. It's not always, kind of out and loud and proud on the chest. Sometimes it's, on the inside of the pocket or the inside of an arm, where only the wearer will feel it. Of course, everything is tagless and flat seamed and eco friendly and feels like silk on the skin. But we wanted something that made our kids not only feel physically great, but also mentally confident.
So tell me, where were you inspired about this new business that you're creating? How did it come together? What kind of ignited this? Because I think honestly, it's so scary to invest in something that could totally fail, and you really have to be I'm gonna say aligned because you use that word, and I think a lot of people are chasing the dollar and they don't make it because, quite frankly, like, you can't be coming from that space. You have to be able to be moving with purpose, and people can feel that intention, especially through products, because there's so much cheap stuff out there and so much competition, right? It's so easy to get caught up in the fear of all the noise. So for you, you must have had a deep inner calling for this. And so what was that for you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you said it so well, Olivia. Like, purpose doesn't replace profit, but it can fuel it. For me, I'd always had an interest in fashion. I didn't end up going to fashion school because that was just not a path that, a creative path was just kind of not something that was encouraged. Again, coming from a very economically, depressed area is all about safety at that point. But art and music and creativity, like, what is life without those things? Like, when we get off of work, the first thing that everybody does is, go indulge in a story, a show, a book, something that brings you joy. And for me, being a brand marketer, that was sort of my compromise between, okay, I've got the business, I'm going to learn this trade, but I also knew in my soul, like, I have to do something creative. I just have to do something with color and light and sound. And that was really something that drove me for many, many years in my corporate career. But my husband owns a business. It is a chain of gymnastics, cheerleading, and dance schools for kids. And as you said, I'm a mom. And I noticed a hole in the market. Our retail sales were declining. I knew that. And it was, again, we were focused on other areas of the business. It just wasn't something that we were pushing. But what I noticed is that, we were sending our customers out to, some of the big box retailers for warm ups and things like that. And I started to notice some trends in the athletic wear market around sort of mental health and confidence, but it was always on the adult kind of side of things. There were a couple of really key brands that started talking about that in a bigger way, but nobody was talking about it for kids. And what's more, when you're a parent and you get your kids involved in sports, you start to notice like how many activities have kind of lost the script. Like, it's about winning, it's about travel, it's expensive. You got to get all this gear. The kids are exhausted. That's really not what sports should be about. Sports should be about teaching lessons and achieving goals. And it should be about growing the child as well as the athlete. And that's really kind of what the line is focused on doing today.
That's phenomenal. And wow, like I think that's also just shedding light on like consciousness and that space for parents that are just getting caught up in, the win-loss comparison mode, and it can be intense. I know I felt that as a kid playing competitive sports. It's just it can get a little toxic pretty quick. So I'm glad you're shedding light on these these ways that you can like kind of impact kids negatively when you don't even realize it.
Yeah, I mean, and particularly with the sport of gymnastics, not an industry known for positive mental health, for sure. And, having been a gymnast myself, and sort of experiencing, the challenges with body positivity and eating disorders that were kind of rampant, back when I was coming up, I just felt like, gosh, if I would have had something like this, if I would have had an environment like this, and if I would have had gear to support this sort of mindset, if I would have had these kind of messages coming in, I might have ended up in kind of a better place than I did when I was a teenager.
Absolutely. Well, that's phenomenal that you're able to tap into that and create something really unique in the market space. So, yeah, tell me more. Like, when does this come out? Like, what's happening? How are you going about, launching a new product?
Yeah, to your point, it is very daunting, because you don't know if something is going to succeed or fail. I've been using a couple different e-commerce playbooks, and you got to walk before you run. Let's be honest. So I started my journey in e-commerce, like a lot of other people, just selling other people's products, trying to make sure that I understand how do you get to profitability, what sells, okay, how do I know how to do PPC on Google and Bing, but how do I do it on Amazon? How do I, create A plus content or some of these other items? And I think getting those fundamentals down, and hopefully, earning a little bit of seed capital along the way is kind of the optimal way to go. But even if you're not successful in those initial phases, you earn or you learn. So either way, you're kind of building as you move forward. It took me probably about 2 years to really find the optimal production partners. Designing the collection was easy. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I've got, 10 more collections that we're so excited to push out. We've got key products, and just some really exciting things on the horizon. But I think finding the right partners, making sure that those partners are adhering to your ethical standards. What do you want your company to be about? For us, eco-friendly was very important. Finding production partners that had ethical practices when it came come to child labor and wage laws was really important to us. So there's lots of things to learn as you go along the way. But we also had the benefit of leveraging, our chain of children's activity centers. And when we launched on November 15th, I was lucky in that, I had Olympian Paul Judah from the men's Olympic team at our launch event, signing autographs in the stores, and willing to be photographed wearing my jacket and talk about it. So it was a really exciting moment, and we just continued to grow from there.
That's phenomenal. And you've said so many one-liners that really stood out to me, and I've been writing them down because I think that they're really profound but simple statements that I think a lot of people don't realize. And I think you're very in tune with these principles like brand is behavior made visible. And you also said purpose doesn't replace profit, but it can fuel it. Can you expand on those a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, at the same time that I was kind of making this pivot, I realized that there was also this huge opportunity to help other founders and organizations do what I had kind of already started to organically do, which was build brands that are strategically sharp but emotionally resonant. And that's why I launched Ignite the Land, which is a brand and marketing consultancy that helps leaders clarify their story, find their voice, and go to market with purpose and precision. We are in such a brand new world. You've got, AI videos and deep fakes and who knows what's really real. And obviously the algorithms are training us to be more divisive. Because that behooves them. But at the end of the day, you're a person, you're selling to another person. Do your values align with theirs? That's really what it's about. It's about aligning values. And if you do it the right way, your brand can communicate those values to the right audience. And at that point, it just becomes about connection.
Absolutely. And I think so with your consulting, you're really big on strategy plus emotionally resonant. Tell me more about that too, because I think that, AI is kind of ruining the internet a little bit. It feels like just so much junk and noise. And so, what's your take on leveraging AI and how do you leverage it so it doesn't sound like an echo chamber of your brand getting diluted with that emotional resonance? And what do you think AI is good at and what do you not use it for?
I mean, first of all, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings on AI. I think it needs to be used very thoughtfully because the environmental impacts cannot be underscored more strongly. It really hurts my heart when I see people, posting, "Oh my gosh, this funny video I made it with AI." Uh, that's great. I don't know that a lot of people fully understand the environmental impacts of AI. So we have to start talking about that more broadly, first of all. But second of all, it is a tool. We are a capitalistic market economy, and your competitors are using it. So, you would be foolish not to leverage this tool in your toolbox. I think it's great for, copy, some better than others, particularly if you're training it the right way with the right prompts. But this idea of like, oh, I can just create an agency out of AI and I can just sit over here on my couch and eat bonbons while the robots are doing all the hard work. That's not the way it works.
It doesn't exist,
No.
and I'm so sick of that fallacy because any legitimate business person understands what's, built, like you said, it's behavior made visible, and you can't build a genuine brand with robots.
No. And I mean, when I'm working with clients, we're focused on brand positioning, storytelling, what's your go to market strategy. You have to clarify who you're trying to reach. What do they stand for? How do you communicate to them in a way that inspires belief and action? That's human behavior. And for us, it's not just marketing, it's kind of like brand therapy. We have to get to the truth underneath the logo. And that's just not something that, a robot can do.
Yeah, what do you think about so when you think about marketing and you're obviously focused on, I would say, e-commerce, do you work with other businesses that are not e-commerce?
We do, absolutely. Actually, our agency has a really strong outdoor component. And I know that people would say in this day and age, like outdoor, really? Like you're not doing everything online? No, we're not. Certainly digital outdoor is one of the most compelling pieces of media with some really strong reach and frequency impacts. So for us, whether it's, a founder or a leadership team who have a strong vision but need help articulating it, we can go analog or digital. Sometimes it's a brand launch. Like I said, sometimes it's a legacy company just trying to modernize, but the common thread is that they care about doing it right. My dream client is somebody who is purpose driven, but also wants results.
Absolutely. So I have to ask, because I'm just curious your take on this as an expert in brand building. What do you think about using AI robots to call people and do that part? I'm just curious on your reaction because we all know what it feels like to get these auto spam AI voice calls, right? We're all getting them now, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know that it necessarily sends the right message. If you're a brand and you're trying to communicate, care and connection, that's what you're trying to do with your brand. You're trying to create connection with that consumer, with that buyer. I just don't know that it communicates that white glove touch. I actually do a lot of philanthropic work. And again, I know it sounds old school, but a simple letter writing campaign with my signature on every single one is way more impactful than me, creating an AI chatbot to robocall, 200 people. You've got to think about the quality and the connection. And I do think that there is eventually going to be somewhat of a renaissance in brand building and e-commerce because certainly, they can do a lot, but at the end of the day, we're all just humans yearning for connection through the screen.
I think that's fascinating because you and I share a very similar perspective on brand, and I'm so happy to hear that because I think people that build brands that can't be ignored are doing things at the beginning and throughout that don't scale or aren't just for profit. So it's finding that balance of profit and effectiveness and also intention, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. At the end of the day, we've got this, teen loneliness epidemic. Even, people who are maybe later on in their careers in the workforce, they don't get together with people, as much as they did 10 or 20 years ago. I mean, we are humans at the end of the day. It's a meme, that says go out and touch grass because we are all we all need that. And I think we like to forget that we are part of this ecosystem. We're all just part of this earth, and we're in it together. So, let's build brands, let's have fun, let's create something that touches someone else in a positive way. And just try to do it thoughtfully in a way that, is environmentally sound as much as it can be.
And, I'm so glad that you're really stepping into this like voice of yours because you've got so much knowledge and I think truth that needs to be heard. So I'm really excited to see kind of where you go with your personal brand. But I want to ask a deeper question because I think a lot of people get caught up in building businesses, but what they don't realize is the harder thing to build is the identity that can build it. And so tell me about how your journey is evolution. You must be evolving as well, right? So how has that gone in the last year and what are you most proud of?
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question, Olivia. I mean, your energy goes to what you focus on, right? I mean, we all kind of know that intuitively, but to remind yourself of it every day and make it an intentional practice is a bit of a different thing. I knew that I wasn't, totally fulfilled. I had like this creative block. I wanted to do more, but I wasn't sure, it's the golden handcuffs. Like, how do you find your way how do you exit the matrix? How do you do all of this stuff? It's really challenging. In the past year, I went through some heavy personal changes. I lost a parent, which is very, very challenging. I continue to care for my youngest child who has some special needs. It is quite challenging, but what has really helped me, I think, is grounding myself every day. I have a daily meditation practice. It's extremely important to me. Whether, you're doing it right or you get anything out of it or not, it just sets the tone for the day. And it's a quiet time for me to be able to pause, think about what do I want to get out of this day? What are my goals? And it allows you to kind of like zoom out from your life in a bit of a different way. I mean, I think the other thing that is really valuable is it also gives you a moment, as kind of the anxieties come up or the fear-based thoughts come up, to be able to just notice those, like, oh. I did not realize that I was so worried about, this launch or what other people are going to think of me or like whatever the case is for you. But I think it's really important to be able to notice that. And then, you kind of got to wrestle those demons to the ground. It is a scary thing to make a pivot like this, for sure. Um, but it is also one of the most rewarding things that I have done. Um, and it's been the most rewarding pivot of my career, for myself, but I also see that reflected through the faces of my children. They are so proud to talk about, oh my gosh, my mom made this, and oh yeah, I got to go and model for this photo shoot. Oh, I got to help my mom pack boxes all all weekend. But it's really is a family affair, and I think when you really zoom out and you look at what's most important in your life, it's your family, it's your impact, and it's your mission. Like, what are you here to do? If you're just here to make a buck, like that's fine. But I don't know that that's as rewarding as applying your kind of heart and soul and talents that you were born with, towards something that's greater than yourself.
I love that you say that because just from my perspective, being on this business building journey, I think that if you chase the dollar, you'll burn out when the dollar's not there because that's what was fueling you,
Right.
and you won't make it. You just won't. I see it all the time. And so that alignment that you spoke about, people tend to get stuck in the capitalistic scoreboard and they get out of alignment and they just don't make it because that doesn't pull you enough. There's energy in money. It's exciting, but then if it becomes the only thing to celebrate, it becomes tough to make really strategic decisions as well as mission driven and knowing when to put the mission first over profit. That's always a tough decision, right? And so those are the I know you behind the scenes with your clothing company, you've been very intentional about aligning with values with every step of the way, which is not always the most profitable. So I wanna honor and celebrate that, and do you wanna share a little bit about that piece? Because I think knowing when to put those above profit is a tough call.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, certainly. I mean, it would be margins will probably be better if I slapped a logo on a plastic legging and called it a day. Sure. Would have been a whole lot easier too. But that's not really what the brand is about. That's not the impact that I want to have. Our businesses, we cover 100% of our employees' health premiums. That's certainly not the best financial decision. But it's important to us because our people are important to us. I saw an interview at one of the major Italian houses, the fashion houses. And they were talking about, they were talking to the founders and they were saying, gosh, you give your employees the entire month of August off. Like, why? Don't you think that you would do better? Don't you think that your salary would improve if you stopped doing that? And they said, no, like we want our employees to want to be here. We want them to be happy. And because of that, we are well known for our craftsmanship and for our quality. And that really, inspired me. There's another businessman who he was the CEO of his company. He cut his $1 million salary down to nothing so that every employee in his company could earn, a living wage. I think everybody in his business earned around $70,000 a year plus benefits. And all of the pundits said, "Oh my gosh, they're going to go under. They're going to quit. This is not going to work." And his retention rate is actually 100%.
Wow.
So again, it is at the end of the day, we've got all these screens, we've got all these tools, we've got all of this at our fingertip, but the world is run by people. We're all still humans at the end of the day. And when you put profits over mission, people can feel it. They can
They
tell.
feel it.
Yeah,
And then the mission just become a word on the wall and it's not truth, and now you've lost trust, and you lose engagement, and you lose commitment, and you can't scale like that.
that's
And
right.
so I'm so glad you hit on that point, and yeah, we are so aligned with how we think about business. It's really cool to hear. So how can people learn more about you, connect with you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I mean, certainly, if you want to learn more, we can link my LinkedIn profile with the podcast, or you can also reach me at Lauren Ganim at chalked.com, CHALKD, Lauren Ganim at chalk.com, or check us out on the web. Yeah, that I'm always happy to have a conversation. Mentorship is such a value of mine. I think it's really important that, you hold the door open for those that are coming before you.
That is so huge, and I know just on this business building journey, I couldn't do it without the mentors, the sounding boards, those little shifts of perspective. It's just so critical, and I know it's so hard to give back. We're all so busy, but it does feel good when you find that person that's like a sponge and they're so open to receive and grateful and they take action on it. So, thank you for offering that. That was very kind.
Absolutely. I mean, I like to say that I went from managing brands to igniting them, whether that's mine or somebody else's.
I love it. Well, congrats on the success and excited to see all your brands soar.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on, Olivia. I mean, truly, I think without the introspection that Career Evolved really forced me to confront, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So, I mean, your mentorship has honestly meant the world to me. Just a vote of confidence, back when I didn't have confidence in myself, it really encouraged me to take a bold step forward. So, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Lauren.
Okay, thanks, Olivia.